Evenings used to hit like a wall. I'd melt into the couch, body heavy, mind buzzing like a loose wire dipped in water. This would happen right when life was supposed to start, when work ended and the real part of the day was meant to begin. So I made a decision. I would treat this tiredness like a puzzle I could solve. Months of experimenting led to 7 small habits that changed how my energy flowed through the day. None of them came from books or TED Talks. I tested them in real life, on my own pulse, and compared notes with others, from history and from now, who quietly figured out how to outsmart burnout. The first clue came in an old town full of scaffolding and pigeons, where a stoneworker brushed white dust from his beard at sunset. After hours of hammering cathedral walls, he would take off his boots and just stand in the square, barefoot. No phone, no checklist. He just stood still, breathing in the warm air rising off the stones until the buzzing in his arms faded. Then he'd walk home, relaxed and light-footed. I brought that to my own life by shutting my laptop, locking the office door, and sitting for 30 seconds on a wooden bench near the stairwell, letting the fluorescent lights hum out of my body. Creating that kind of pause inside a high-rise wasn't easy, but I made it work. I found a bench beside the exit and gave it a purpose. Each afternoon, I sat there, looking up at the slice of sky between buildings. I'd count to 30 slowly. A breeze from a vent would brush my ankles. Faraway seagulls echoed between the walls. For that half minute, the spreadsheets disappeared. I could feel my ribs move again. My breath stopped sounding like a machine and became something soft and mine. Then I found a 100-year-old letter from a postal worker who sorted mail like a machine by day, but wrote incredible fiction by night. Her trick was a break she called her pocket window. Every day during her 10-minute break, she'd sneak into a city garden and stare at a vine climbing a fence until the noise in her head dropped away. She said it helped her remember the natural rhythm of her body. I took her lead. I sat at a sidewalk cafe, eyes following a slow-moving cloud or the pulse of a traffic light, and waited for my own rhythm to come back. Watching that one cloud helped me realize how little it takes to calm the mind. A single leaf could hold all my focus if I let myself really see it. Its veins like tiny rivers, the color shifting like a sunrise. Spending just 2 minutes doing this felt like dipping a rag in cold water and pressing it to an overheated engine. When I returned to my inbox, even the blinking cursor seemed more relaxed. It was like the software was syncing with me instead of the other way around. Another lesson came on a subway platform. A train conductor who spends hours in a metal box full of screeching noise stepped off at the end of his shift looking fresh and calm. I watched him close his eyes just before arriving, drop his shoulders, and take 6 deep, slow breaths. It was like he washed stress out of his system with air. I borrowed his method and started doing the same thing in the elevator after work. By the time I reached the ground floor, the static in my head had cleared. Those elevator breaths became a kind of emotional sensor. If my chest was tight or the breath didn't reach deep, I knew stress had backed up. I'd go for another round of breaths before hitting traffic. Over time, co-workers started copying me. We'd ride down together, silent, eyes closed, leaning into the pause like co-conspirators sneaking peace past the security gates. Another discovery came from a 17th century printmaker. After long hours pressing ink to paper, he'd wash his hands and pick up a lute. He believed music shook loose the tiny mental splinters left by work. I'm no musician, so I turned my kitchen into my version of his studio. Chopping onions, stirring sauce, letting spices sizzle. It all became a way to return to myself. Cooking wasn't just feeding myself, it was real-time therapy. The smell, the textures, the quiet sizzle of garlic. Everything pulled me out of the swirl of the day. Cooking also triggered something deeper. The smell of onions kick-started my digestion before I even ate. Kneading dough stretched my wrists in the opposite direction of typing. Even washing dishes with warm water circling in my palms felt like a gentle massage. By dinner, my brain had switched lanes from thinking to sensing, and leftover worries simply couldn't follow me into that space. Then, There was the paramedic. After 12 hours of emergencies, she doesn't scroll or binge watch to unwind. She flips her phone to grayscale, mutes notifications, and turns the lights down low. Bright colors, she said. Keep the nervous system wired. I tried it. I dimmed the screens, talked to family without background noise, and let my senses adjust to softer light. It was like telling my whole body, "You're safe now. You can let go." The dull screen felt weird at first, like my phone was broken. But then something shifted. I started noticing things I usually missed. The texture of the couch, a cricket chirping outside, the soft creak of the floorboards. Even conversations became richer. No one reached for their phone, and the house stopped feeling like a bunch of glowing rectangles and started feeling like a real home again. Then came movement. An old watchmaker used to take long walks by the river after work. He said if he didn't, the gears in his mind would keep turning all night. I copied him. After dinner, I laced up and walked for 10 minutes beneath the streetlights. My blood moved, my joints loosened, and when I got home, stretching on the rug felt like brushing knots out of tangled hair. Sleep came soon after, slow and steady like a tide. That evening walk did something else too. It raised my body temperature just enough that the cool down afterward told my brain it was time for deep sleep. My dreams stopped being reruns of emails and became strange, wide-open scenes that somehow answered the questions I'd been stuck on. I'd wake up early with calm legs and a steady pulse, like my sleep had given more than it took. The last piece came from a scientist who lived months in polar darkness. Every night, he ended his journal with 3 specific things he was grateful for, like the grip of his boots or the quiet crunch of frost. This helped him see what was still good in a place full of lack. I started a gratitude notebook. Every night, I'd jot down 3 things, no matter how small. It's like closing the shutters on a gentle house. Even when the gratitude feels fake, the act of naming something shifts the energy. I'll write down the drip of rain outside or the way someone smiled at me in the grocery store. My brain seems to hold on to those tiny gifts and keep hunting for more. Even in dreams, I've woken up remembering kind words from years ago or colors in murals I passed without noticing. These 7 moves don't work like a checklist. They're more like parts of a whole. The bench pause blends into the cloud watch. The elevator breath echoes in the scent of simmering spices. The gray screen opens a space for gratitude. One habit feeds the next. Within a month, the crash that used to hit me mid-afternoon disappeared. Now my energy stays steady till bedtime. Sounds too luxurious? But the mason paused for 30 seconds. The train worker breathed for 15. The paramedic just switched her phone settings. The point isn't time, it's clarity. These moves are like green lights for your body to start healing itself, even while the day's still moving. There's something deeper too. Exhaustion can feel like part of your personality. This is just who I am. But these practices chipped away at that story. One night, I found myself reaching for a book of poems instead of doom scrolling. I realized I wasn't drained. I just needed better habits. Each habit trained me to do one thing at a time, completely. Watch a leaf, stir soup, say thanks. That's how energy leaks stop. When you stop trying to do 5 things at once, seal the leaks and the same amount of fuel goes much further. Of course, these rituals won't fix broken systems, but they can make tonight better. They're little acts of rebellion, feeding you life in places the clock can't reach. They prove that there's space between work and collapse, and in that space, something peaceful can grow. I've kept small objects to remind me. A stone from the bench, a towel stained with saffron, a screw from a drawer that made me stretch my wrist, a map of the North taped inside my closet. They're not trophies. They're reminders. They point me home.